Are we live?
Can't tell. Are we?
Yes. Okay. Hey everyone, we're live. So I'll share my deck in just a second, but Victoria, Ria, I'll let you two do a quick introduction. You two can also introduce to each other too, so you can refer to each other or refer to however many people are watching.
Okay. Do you
Yes,
want to
go first? Okay, yeah, sure, I can go ahead. So my name is Ria. I am a recent graduate in Masters in Human Computer Interaction from Indiana University. I also have a background in computer science engineering and started out as a cybersecurity analyst and then decided to switch my field because I was interested in design, and that's how I am right now in this field. So I started my first full-time job out of masters at Google, where I'm working as a UX designer in AdMob. Super exciting, and super excited to meet you all and to be a part of this. Yeah. And over to you too.
Cool. Thanks for the introduction. So my name is Victoria, and I graduated from Rhode Island School of Design. I majored in industrial design, and I started my job after that, and I now work in Fidelity Investments in the healthcare sector. And previously, I've had experiences in fintech as well as insurance tech, also as a user experience designer.
All right, and I'm going to share my deck in just a second, but just a quick intro. I'm one of the co-founders here at UXGo. We've partnered with Design Buddies through our merger in 2024, and we're really excited to bring you this series live. We're trying a few different things. So, this one, we're trying to make it more kind of podcast, conversational, and engagement-based. Of course, I think examples really help whenever we're teaching anything. And I'm really happy to have Ria and Victoria join me. Both of you are wonderfully talented designers and smart people in general. I really enjoyed teaching both of you back in the day through UXGo days. I think both of you also remember we used to do like the live courses thing in memberships. I remember seeing the two of you a lot. So this is kind of like that, but we're bridging it to like a larger audience just as a live stream. So everyone who's tuning in right now, maybe you can quickly share a little bit about yourself as well. I have one of our team members who isn't part of this live, who's sending me some like information as you all share. So there's someone in the background kind of passing the information to us. Unfortunately, the three of us can't see in real time what you all are saying. I guess like Victoria and Ria, if you two want, like maybe you can pull up the live somewhere on your phone or something if you want to see what's going on. But Mavi will be helping us direct the questions. So if everyone could quickly just share a little bit about yourself, like are you an early career? Are you like a senior designer? What are kind of like your reasons you joined? What are you interested in? We'll like give it a few minutes to have everyone like type everything. And then Mavi, behind the scenes, if you see anything interesting, just like relay it to me, and then we'll call it out from there. Okay, I think we have, Mommy said we have about 40, 50 people now. So we'll go ahead and start. But if you're just joining now, we just did our introductions. We're about to start, and we would like everyone to just share a little bit more about yourselves. Okay, I will pull up my share screen. I'm going to try to open the live on my side as well. Okay, I see Los Angeles, California. I'm just going to read it to you too. I don't know if you two have the live open, so I'll be the broadcaster. Hello, nice to meet you all. I'm reading this in a very official voice. Early junior UX UI designer and researcher. Wow. Okay, very impressive. What else? Thank you for hosting this live stream. Thank you, Cindy, for being here. I'm an early career. Okay, so we got a lot of early career folks. I think today will be a great panel then. If you're just joining, Victoria and Ria both were looking for early career roles not so long ago. So I will start my share screen. Can everyone see my share screen? Let me add it. Mavi, I'm in your help adding it. Okay, perfect. Everyone can see my share screen now, right? All right, so we're on episode 2, and then we have our guests who've introduced themselves already. Is the share screen working? Just making sure everyone on the live, can we see the share screen? Yes? No? Yes? Okay, perfect. I know the live stream is like delayed by a little bit. So just quick introducing everyone again. So we have Ria and Victoria here today. Ria is a UX designer at Google. Victoria is a designer at Fidelity. Both of them are UXGo alumni, meaning they went through like our UXGo membership systems. They went through UXGo advanced classes, like that one-on-one classes. They can talk more about that later themselves. But the whole point of what we're talking about today is just to answer your questions and share examples. So we don't want to focus too much on exactly what UXGo does and all that. If you're interested, there will be opportunities for you to check that out later. However, the core of this series, we've done this for about 3 years. And we've done it at a lot of different schools. So we've actually done it at RISD when Victoria was a president there for IDSA, right? So quick shout out to Victoria for your wonderful event hosting abilities there. But what we're trying to do is this series has been really, really helpful to every university student on campus. But we know a lot of early career students aren't necessarily attending these top universities, right? Not everyone has the privilege, or maybe for your school, like we try to go to every school's career fair, every university, but maybe you just haven't been to your school. Maybe you've never been part of the Break into UX series. So hopefully by bringing this to live stream, we can just share it with a bigger audience, even though doing it virtually is sort of switching it up a little bit. And don't worry, like if you really want to see this event in person, we're still actually working with a lot of schools. Schools like RISD, schools like CMU, we're still working with them. We're still producing this series in person as well. But that's just a quick breakdown of like the 3-year history on where these series comes from. So today's topic for episode 2, I know on Luma, on different places, we talk about case study portfolio. Some of those topics might even be a little bit confusing to you. So in other less fancy words, the way I like to call it is just like giving you an introduction on the most important things you need to do to get an interview, right? And obviously, nowadays, we want to emphasize getting an interview first, because that's actually the most challenging part about getting a job. And yeah, I saw Mommy's note. If you want to get your work critiqued today by Victoria, by Ria, by me, Victoria and Ria would be great resources because they've literally just been through this job hunting process not so long ago. They're recent alumni. I was talking to Victoria just a few days ago. She was saying like she would hate to go through the job hunting process again. So we all know the struggle you're going through. So if you want like your website, if you have like a Figma link, whatever you want, just submit the live, and then Mavi will be forwarding it to us. So we will be giving you like real one-on-one, 3-on-1 advice today. So like I said, we don't want to spend too much time introducing ourselves, but if you're just interested in like, hey, I'm just joining, I don't know what UXGo is, I don't know what Design Buddies is, that's going to be your responsibility to check it out. So it's going to be very, very like technical today. So there won't be any like information or orientation type information. With that said, I want to set just some house rules so everyone knows for these live streams and future calls how it's going to go. And I know Ria, Victoria, like we're kind of inviting you two on the spot too, so maybe this is helpful information for the two of you. So first rule and goal of us is we don't want to talk about anything you can find on YouTube, right? The second one is we really want you to engage. I see everyone engaging. I see a bunch of links coming in. You all are great. So that's why this is live, right? So this used to be like a paid series, right? Like people would spend like hundreds and hundreds to join something like this every week. We're trying to do it all for free, not because the quality is going to be crappier. Like, in fact, we're going to try to make the quality even better. But we really want you to engage. And sometimes when something's free, people don't engage, right? Because if it's free, people just assume it's not good. at times. But the whole point of your being here is we want you to engage. And then the last thing is like, if you have questions about just like payment related things or UX Go things, like we don't want to spend time to answer those questions. We just want to make sure you're engaged. And like I said, this course or this series, whatever way you want to think about it, is going to be worth your time. So we don't want to waste your time or our time sharing it if you are not paying that much attention. So the outcomes of following all these is going to be very similar to our traditional live episodes. We're going to make it a little bit more fun. I will try to crack some jokes as best as I can. I don't know if they'll be funny, but you all can pretend to laugh. So I'll try to make it entertaining. And another thing that's really important is like, we want to share information that's personal to you so you can't find it on YouTube, right? So it's like, please ask questions. We're also going to try to share things that are very opinionated, right? So like Victoria or Ria, when you share things like, don't be afraid to share your hot takes, right? If you're like, damn, like if I were to restart my college years, I would not want to be a UX designer, right? I don't think any of you would say this, but like, don't be afraid to share your hot takes, right? Like that's what we're here for. And then finally, like just by joining all these lives, like we're going to give you really valuable content, but you're not obviously going to find a job by just joining this, right? Like you might look at Victoria or Ria's work like, damn, that's great. I feel like I learned so much. And then you close your laptops, you're like, 1 week later, all right, this is the next episode. Who are these guests? Who are the coaches? Who are the speakers? Oh, wow, I learned so much. You close your laptop. That's not going to help you in any way. So if you find something engaging, meaningful, valuable, we want to motivate you to actually like make progress. And, you know, like if you want to just join these series weekly, you can even share like, hey, this is the stuff I did from now and then. I took some of these advice, blah, 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 blah. So that's what we want to see, right, when we meet engagement. So that should cover all the grounds. Hopefully all this makes sense. If everyone likes these ground rules, let us know. Also, feel free to give us feedback, right? Like if there are any things that, so we're taking feedback pretty closely. Like last week when we had Jen's session, sharing about like our 10-week internship program, we got some feedback where it's too orientation based. So I pre-cut most of that content. So we're here going to the first topic today. If you like those house rules or if you have different ideas you want the house rules to change, let us know, because these episodes are only going to be more and more insightful. But we do want everyone who's a beginner to feel comfortable following along. Okay. Hopefully, like there's no audio or anything issues. If there is, also let me know. We'll cover it into topic 1. So the first topic is case studies versus portfolios. The first question I actually want to pose to the crowd, and Ria and Victoria, I'll ask the two of you this too. Do you two feel like a case study and a portfolio is the same thing? Yes or no? Victoria, I'll let you answer this question first.
I think this was a question I asked a lot when I was preparing my materials.
Smart answer. Yeah, so what do you think?
So I think with a portfolio, that is kind of like the place where you're trying to, I guess, capture the recruiter or capture whoever you're sending it to almost get your foot in the door. And so I would say for me, for the portfolio, you're not trying to like throw every piece of information in there related to your project. You kind of just want to showcase that you're able to, you have like an understanding and you have practiced these basic, I guess, UX skills in your projects. And I guess for the portfolio, it would be slightly more high level. But for the case study, for me, I really focused on like storytelling and making sure that there was like a point to pretty much everything I put in there. But compared to the portfolio, it was a lot more in depth into explaining my thinking process and my design process.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. Yeah, great answer, being put on the spot. I see you still got those behavioral question type skills, so you did very well. Ria, what about you? Any other insights you want to like add on to Victoria, or like do you agree with what she said? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Just for me, I consider portfolio as something where case studies would be. So a portfolio would be something about my work as well as a little bit about myself. That's something that I love to see when I check on other portfolios. I love to see what something about them. And I have gotten feedback about my about me also, because sometimes recruiters want to see your personality as well, and that would also spark conversations. So I would consider portfolio as a bigger picture and wherein case studies live, and the case studies could be shorter or longer, like how Victoria said. um, so yeah, that would be my take about this.
Okay, great. So everyone who's listening in, like, think about this first topic, right? If your early career, like especially like if you've never been through the job hunting process, these are two terms you're going to hear again and again. Hey, can I get portfolio feedback? Right? Like this is probably something you're going to say for like the next 2 years, maybe even. Hopefully not that long. Like you might say like, hey, can I prep my case study? Right? Like what do these things actually mean? So go ahead in the live, wherever you are, let us know like, hey, are you thinking about the same lines as what Victoria and Ria are thinking? Anything else you want to add, or any misconceptions you know of? I'm going to go ahead and reveal this. So just some quick facts, right? A portfolio and a case study are not actually the same thing, right? But these are words we use pretty interchangeably, right? I don't think that's a real word. Like interchangeably is a real word. So yeah, so these two things could generally like be used in the same sentence. You could probably replace one for the other. Commonly, you will hear things like, hey, I have a portfolio interview, right? But when people say I have a portfolio interview, what they actually mean is they have a case study interview. And the reason is exactly what Victoria shared, right? When you have a case study, that's one curated piece of content that you are using to present or attract someone, right? There's going to be a lot of different use cases for case study and portfolio, but you want to know that a portfolio and case study generally are not the same thing when you prepare it, right? For other people, they might use the words interchangeably, but for you, you need to prepare them with completely different approaches. And I want to give a few quick examples here. The first example I want to give is there's this one resource I think everyone can quickly skim, and I think it is just on Figma. I believe we made this resource. One of the alumni actually made this resource, Ening. So shout out to her. She actually made this resource, like I think in 2023. But you'll find some of these examples she has about, how to start on a resume. And one part of it actually talks about like the landing page and the case studies, right? And I wanted to quickly share this because when we talk about case studies, you might think of something like this, right? You might think of something that's on your website, like a deck like this. For our purpose of this call, we will also talk about case studies like both on the website, but also another big part is like when you eventually showcase it for your interview. And going back to just quickly to map something out for all of you on FigJam is there's a few scenarios where someone is looking at your work. The first type is something called a 30-second scenario. Okay. The second type is usually like a 5-minute scenario. And the last type is a 15-minute scenario, usually. I guess we can start with Ria. Ria, what do you feel like are some scenarios where someone's like looking at your work for just 30 seconds? What are some scenarios someone might look at your work for 5 minutes? What are some scenarios where someone might look at your work for 15 minutes? I can share your thoughts.
Sure. I would say 30 seconds would be probably a recruiter just checking it from my resume just to see what exactly it is, just to get a quick overview. I'm assuming that a recruiter might not be interested to see in depth about what my projects are or even to look into my case studies. 5 minutes, I would say that would be something the hiring manager would be looking at, just to see if this is someone who has the potential to be interviewed. 15 minutes, probably that would be when they plan to actually interview me, and then they would want to actually see what exactly it is, probably to prepare themselves for the questions just before the interview. That's what I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yeah. So really good answer there, really good insight. So that's one thing I want everyone who's listening to make sure we're all aligned on this, right? So the same content, like we're not talking about different content, different project. The same project you have, is going to be looked at by different lenses, right? So if you share the same project with someone, you need to be comfortable to have them feel like this is a sexy piece of work in 30 seconds, 5 minutes, or 15 minutes, right? If you do a really complicated design process storytelling, that's going to be something for 15 minutes of attracting someone's attention. That would never be something that makes sense for 30 seconds, right? So knowing the context when your case study portfolios are being looked at is very, very important. So just to reiterate what Ria said, you have a few different audiences you have here, right? And as a user experience designer, you know how important knowing your users are. So when you're starting to prepare your work, you need to think about who are the users, what am I sharing with them? So we have 30 seconds, recruiter, important things for them, right? Probably visual, right? 30 seconds, you're really not getting a lot of content. Remember, they're also not technical, so they probably are just looking for some specific pieces that they're looking. Maybe they want to make sure you have like a design system. Maybe they want to look at you have like a wire flow, right? Maybe they want to make sure you've done some user tests, right? So they're usually just looking for headers, visuals, things like that. Hiring manager, right? They are technical, might be looking at your storytelling. There's another case scenario where you might need to present your work for just 5 minutes. So we'll talk about that too. And then usually for 15 minutes, this is an actual full-on interview where you are presenting your work. Does this all make sense so far? Like, is anyone like, if this is already getting a little bit too advanced, like you're not following along, make sure you let us know. I hear there's some buzzing sound from Gio mentioned there's some buzzing sound. So Mommy, let me know if you also hear some like static on your side. But okay, let me know. Make sure everyone's following along so far. Not too difficult, I assume. Okay. So we quickly covered when to use each. I think Gio, other people said they're not having the issue, so I'm just going to move on. But thanks for letting us know. So when to use each, what would you start with? Let's go with, so we talked about like this kind of depends. I'll share some examples too. So Victoria, like maybe we'll go with you first. Do you have an example from your portfolio or your deck that you want to share? And we can look at that as a quick example. I'll let you share your screen.
Yeah, sure. I can pull up the deck that I used. Give me 1 second.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everyone, for letting us know it makes sense. Yeah. So we'll look at examples based off of what we just talked about, right?
Okay. So just very briefly, this is the deck that I used in my interview. Kind of
Victoria,
crazy.
give us 1 sec. Yeah, I think it's being pulled up right now. Oh, I remember. I remember this deck. I remember we working on this deck together. Okay, yeah, go ahead. This is a good deck, though. This is a good deck.
It's kind of crazy, kind of long. It doesn't have to be this long. I just wanted to make my slides transition very smoothly. And so, like, I have multiple slides conveying the same message, but just, anyways, you don't have to do this. But like I mentioned earlier, for the deck, I used it in my interview for the portfolio review, and rather than walking through what's on my portfolio, I made a deck so that I'm able to focus more on the storytelling and kind of bring the audience into my design process a little bit more. And so I guess a little brief overview of my deck. I started off with, my design process, some fun facts, and then I briefly went through like, these are the projects that I have done. And then, like, in this deck, I will focus on these 2 projects. And again, sometimes they'll ask you to prepare 1 project or 2 projects, and so that really varies, but I just prepared 2 just in case. And then, for example, this is a fintech startup that I had interned for, and I go into this project by talking about, a little bit of the background, my role, kind of the impact of my work. So I kind of go in by teasing the audience a little bit, so the before and after, and then as well as mentioning what were my KPI goals, what were the business goals. then I kind of dive into some of the research that I did, and I tried to put as much like concrete data as possible to show that my design process was backed with research. And then I looked at the current product, did a little bit of analysis for that, again, backing up why we had to do this redesign, as well as outlining some comparative analysis that I did, and then eventually reaching the how might we. And so at this point, I then go into the actual product itself and how this new redesign would create a better user experience for the users, and going into how this new system of managing finances on this product would work. And then I go through the happy path. So these, when I play it, they're actually all like live videos, and so
Yeah,
I'm kind of.
we'll take your word for it. We'll trust you. We'll trust you. They're very good.
Should I?
No, it's okay. You can continue. We'll just take it. Just, everyone who's watching, like the most beautiful motion design starts happening. They'll just visualize it.
Yes, just please visualize it. But basically, I'm at this point, I'm also kind of having to, I like have a script written out. And then at this point, I'm also timing myself as these slides are playing in the background. So when the slide switches, I'm also like moving on with whatever I'm saying in my speech. So I go through that and I keep going through that. And then I dive a little bit into like the iteration, just because I wanted to show people the final product first, so that they get a better understanding of like how I got there. And then I go into some documentation, design systems, handing off. I talk a little bit about like testing and handing off to the devs. And then I conclude by, saying the impact of my KPI. So I put in data that compares it to the table I had in before at the beginning of the presentation. And then just a few slides for reflection. And then what I would do differently.
This is great. So Victoria, a few follow-up questions I think people are eager to learn more is, number one, like when you were in your interviews, also just a reminder, we just talked about having case studies for different use case. This is obviously a great example for use case when you're presenting your work, right? So Victoria, do you remember how long this case study was when you presented?
If I remember correctly, it was around like 18 to 20 minutes.
Could you actually put up the share screen again, Victoria, so people can see as we comment on it?
Yeah, for sure. 1 second.
Yeah, so I think we just got that question, how much time did we spend? So actually, to probably most of your surprises, this is about that 15-minute length, right? Like this is actually how much content you're presenting. So even though it looks like a lot, when you were saying that, Rio was probably thinking like, yeah, don't worry, mine is just as long, if not longer. And I think this is a great example of a project. I also know this project pretty well, right? Because it's from like our 10-week internship advanced class. So one other question I wanted to ask you was like, do you feel, I can't remember if this was like I know this was like one of the first cases you did with UX Go, but afterwards I know you had like a bunch of other internships and stuff. Like, do you feel like you were able to use the same sort of storytelling structure on the other projects, or do you feel like for each project you would have to write a different story?
I think it definitely did help for the other projects. Even like the one down below that I didn't do with UX Go, I pretty much used the same method or the same outline of storytelling, and basically just like putting in all the relevant pieces.
And did you feel like it was more helpful for you to make the deck first or make the website first? Because I know you also spend a lot of time like iterating on your website, probably even too long. So what did you feel like was more helpful? Like, did you do the deck first, the website first? Maybe you can share a bit more on that.
Well, from my experience, I had my portfolio a long time before I made the deck, and so I think making the deck honestly wasn't as difficult for me because I had iterated my portfolio so many times that the storytelling was essentially there on my portfolio already, and I just had to translate that into my deck. But specifically with like making the deck, what I found to be really helpful was writing out what I wanted to say first, or like writing out my story first, and then kind of just creating visuals to go along that.
When you were making this deck, I'm sure, like, like I know we've done the whole process together, right? With like starting from research and then every step, like what we're doing the advanced classification. I'm sorry, I'm not sure whose phone was buzzing. Okay. Yeah. So I know we did that whole process together, but I'm sure when you're prepping the deck for the interview, like there are some parts you feel like you had to like redo, make stronger. What do you feel like was the most like challenging part of like creating like additional pieces for the deck? Were there anything you can think of right now, like any additional things you felt like were hard to add or had to structure?
For me, I don't know. For me, I don't know if I don't really think I had the problem of like having to create additional things. I think my problem was having to
Narrowing
pare it down. Like I think I had too much.
Okay.
And so which is also why like I iterated my portfolio so many times. Was to
Did you
figure
want to
out.
share your portfolio site too, or do you feel like you are
Yeah,
not? Yeah, you can share the site too.
Yeah. Okay. 1 second.
Just want to say, Victoria, it's a very clean case study.
Thank you.
Yeah, really amazing.
Okay, let me see. Can everybody see my tab that's open?
Mavi, that's all up to you. You gotta manage us from the background. I think Mavi's putting it up, but yeah, it's on. It's on.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm just gonna briefly scroll through this. You can kind of see that, it's pretty much the same structure as my case study. Basically, I start off with like background information, my role, my team, and then kind of created this like moving image to capture the audience. And then I go into the background. Not for every project. I think it might have only been for this project. I outlined like my process and like the different steps I took. And then I go into, user research, and I tried my best to like visualize everything so that it's easier for users to take it in. Competitive analysis, as well as, again, like looking at the current product and, things that we could fix about the current product, and then going into like the different iterations, just like design process, thought process, and then user testing. And this, I just kept it really simple. Like, I guess like what were the main takeaways? I didn't really go into the super in-depth stuff. And then again, these were the moving GIFs that I was talking about earlier when I was showing my deck.
While we were hyping up, yeah.
Yeah, so it was the same thing that was playing on each of these slides. And then again, API, and then earnings. Yeah.
Great work. Okay. I just for the sake of them, I think this is really helpful. So everyone, like if you're watching, like Victoria, just imagine everyone clapping for you. So yeah, please give a quick thank you for Victoria sharing this. We'll actually come back to this because I think like when the time I taught you how to build this portfolio in the case study thing, that's like a few years ago, right? And then there's probably a few things I would have done differently now if I'm like reteaching this portion. I like how you said that. Yeah, so fast. You're like, yeah, there's some things I wanted to redo as well.
Yeah, there are times now when I look at it and I'm like, oh, I would like to go back and redo something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're all designers, so yeah, we always critique our own work. So
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, you got a lot of compliments. Okay, Ria, do you want to maybe start with your website first? We might not have time to go into another case really in depth, but maybe you can start with the website. And if you want to briefly share a case, you can also briefly share a case.
Sure.
And then everyone watching, please let us know if what was helpful. If you have any questions for Victoria, this is also the time to ask like follow-up questions for Victoria. You can put it in the chat.
So this is my case study. Sorry, not case study, portfolio. I really wanted to give a quick overview about who I am as a person, what is my belief, and also maybe not be too serious, show my personality somewhere. That's why I thought of adding the small GIF. Little bit about myself, what I'm looking for. So I didn't update it yet. So I wanted whoever who is looking at this wanted to, if they're looking to hire me, that's why I thought of adding this. I have 4 projects. And 3 of these are internship projects, and one is a passion project, a project that I did during my college. Yeah, and I'll quickly show my about me. This is where I thought I'd add everything about myself, what I like listening to, reading to, all those things.
This is really cool. Victoria, I remember you had a section like that on your website too, right? For your about.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I do. I just didn't show it just now.
Yeah, this is smart. This is smart. So if you're watching, I think Ria was spot on this. I just want to emphasize it again. Like having that personal flair is really good. And Ria, I know like you also spend a lot of time iterating the website too. I've seen both you and Victoria remake your websites at least 2 times in my time teaching to you. I've seen the 2 of you remake your websites probably the most out of every UX Go member. But hey, if you're watching, that could be why they got good jobs. So you never know. But Ria, is there a case study you want to you can just go in from your website. Is there one you want to quickly show?
Yeah, sure. So this is a case study that I showed for all my.
Oh, Ria, I think you might have lagged a little bit.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. So this is the case study that I showed. The reason why I decided to choose this is because it's a design system and also it's an enterprise platform. And the interview calls that I was getting were mostly enterprise companies or products which were enterprise focused. So I thought that this would be if I make this case study, then I don't have to make more case studies because it has a design system which all the products need. Now, how I structured this case study is kind of similar to Victoria a little bit, just giving a brief overview about what it is, what role I have taken, timeline, team, the ask. I also tried to include the business goals, especially because I was looking to get into product design roles. That's why I wanted to give all these things. What are the user goals and how would the success metrics? So one thing I want to mention here is that the product that I worked on, when I left the company, it was not yet released. So I don't have the correct metrics to measure success. So what I had put here is how I would measure success when this product gets actually released. Now, the impact also. And I have given a quick overview of design process. And now this is where the process actually starts. What are the process? What are the things that I did during each of these processes? Yeah, I also tried to add a little bit of visuals also, not trying to make it not much text heavy. Yeah. So and
Ria,
some
did you remove your like left nav? I remember you used to have like a
yeah.
What's the design decision behind that?
So I actually had for anyone who is wondering what it is, I had a left nav which quickly takes you through different sections. One reason why I used to have that was my case study was very long, so this was there to make it go quicker to a particular section. Now the reason why I didn't add or I removed is because I'm making this in Webflow, so it became very difficult for me to actually update in it for other projects. So I thought that it's better to remove it, and it didn't actually affect me much. I'm assuming. So that's one reason. But it's actually I would have actually included it if it was much more easier for me to deal with it. But yeah, that's the only reason why I removed it.
So Ria, did you make your decks first, or did you make your portfolio first?
I made my portfolio first. The reason being that portfolios are the ones that would give us a call first, and that's what I need to get a job. And then, but one thing that I did, which is not encouraged, is that I started making my case study once I got an interview call. So I didn't have enough time to iterate on it. So it might not be the best decision, but to answer your question, it's portfolio first for me.
And I remember, I know you two redone your portfolios a lot of times, but I remember when we're in UXGO, like when we're doing the live courses a few years ago, I think both of you used Webflow, right? Are the two of you still sticking with Webflow right now?
Yes.
Or Ria, are you still on Webflow? Is this still on Webflow, Ria?
Yeah, this is. So I started out with Notion, then Wix, then Webflow, and now I'm sticking with Webflow because it's much more easier to control the spacings and all those things and
Yeah.
duplicate and do it.
Yeah, and just disclaimer, I know we have I know Design Buddies has like some partnership deals, so like this is not like a sponsored message for Webflow. Like the three of us just happen to personally use Webflow, so we got that question. I will also share like in just a second like how it looks behind the scenes of Webflow. I used Wix too. I believe my first portfolio was on Wix. I think when I was using Wix, Webflow didn't exist yet, but once Webflow came out, I moved pretty early. Victoria, did you use anything else other than Webflow?
No, I started off on Webflow. I used Webflow in one of my early internships, and then I just
Okay, yeah. I remember. Yeah. Do any of you two feel like Webflow is very hard to use, easy to use? What are your feelings on the site builder itself?
I think there's a learning curve, but once you get past that learning curve, it becomes really easy.
I was about to say, like, I used to hate Webflow. Like, translation is like, I used to hate Webflow, but now it's okay. But yeah, Ria, how about you?
For me also, I would echo the same thing. And Webflow has detailed tutorials on YouTube, which is quite helpful. So, and they have this portfolio specifically dedicated for portfolio. I'm assuming it's like a 15-day tutorial. So I started out with that. I didn't actually finish all the 15 days of things, but then once I had a little bit idea about what it is, I started using Webflow. Now, one story I would like to add here is that I have a friend. I'm coming from a technical background, so I thought that might be one reason why it's easier for me to understand it. I also have a friend who is not coming from a technical background who has started using Webflow, and it's very easy for him to use now. So it might be just the initial learning curve that you have to overcome to get used to Webflow, but it's worth it.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, Avi, I'm sharing something from my end. See if you can. Yeah, okay, perfect. So I think the two of you probably remember this, like back when you two were part of UXO, like this is one example I shared with you. I know Victoria, yours is maybe a little bit more modeled after this than Ria's. Ria, I know you removed the left nav. So the left nav is what we're talking about here. So I will say like a few things I would now for our current like advanced classes. Like if you're already signed up for the current like internship advanced class, we are probably going to teach this a little bit differently. If you're signing up for like our portfolio, like we will probably teach this a little bit differently. But I do want to emphasize like this did used to work really well. I think this model from like 21 to 23, but we're slowly going to see a shift away in 24. And this is like speaking purely from a recruiter hiring manager perspective. Like I'm speaking as my experience as a design lead, like hiring people, but I'm also speaking as my experience seeing like UXCO members applying to internships, right? And the data is pretty big. Like last year we had like in the past 5 years, I've probably taught 1,000 students, like personally, like one-on-ones, like Ria and Victoria here. So it is a little bit biased, but I think just the sample size is big enough. I would really recommend everyone who's building out their website nowadays to just optimize for that 30-second experience and really, really try to avoid longer case studies like the way we have it now, or in this example. And this example I have here, like this is a student project. Like this isn't a project I've done for industry, but I wanted to show this really quickly because at the time, like this was one of the cases when I interviewed with Apple for the final round. They deliberately selected this. They wanted me to just present this, and they studied it ahead of time. right? So transitioning to one of our last topics for today, a recruiter is going to look at your work essentially like this, right? They used to do this and they're still going to do this. So if you're seeing my share screen, like they're skimming it, right? Like in 30 seconds. So this is stuff like the left nav where it comes in handy. The way I would condense this nowadays, like if I were to critique my own work from like, I don't know how long ago this was, but like however many years ago this example was, I would definitely change a lot of the text. And I think nowadays with Webflow, a lot of things, like you could also build this site a little bit smarter. I've recently helped some students build where like the sections are collapsible and expandable, right? So like if they are really interested in the survey data, they can just pull it up like more interactive. So everything we're talking about here, just FYI, if you remember the first topic we talked about today, this is all case study, right? Like this is the definition of a case study. A portfolio would be something like this. So if I share my tab really quickly, the last time I updated my site is like maybe a year or two ago, so it's not as updated. But this is like, if you think about the whole portfolio, this is like what Ria shared, right? It's that experience of like who you are, like what's special about you, your personal story. Obviously, if you're early career and intern, you might not design your site like this, and I probably wouldn't recommend you to design it this way. For me, because like I was a design lead before, a lot of the work was just shipped. Like I don't need to. It'll be really weird if I documented exactly how I shipped the work, like a student project, right? So it's kind of a different design philosophy. But like having those sort of TLDRs, having a very personalized site becomes more and more important when the like higher level you become, right? Especially if you're senior designer, people really want to know who you are as well. So hopefully these examples give you a good understanding of portfolio versus a individual case study. And yeah, like if you are designing like your work with Webflow in our future series, we're not going to have time for it today because I really want the three of us to be able to crit some of your works. Is Webflow is a good site builder, pretty steep learning curve. Not going to lie. The way I recommend it, and I think Victoria and Ria, I think I recommended this to you too, was like you can actually just mess around with it first, right? Like just mess around with it. And if you get stuck, just try to unblock yourself by learning that. I think that's the best way I would recommend to anyone who wants to just give it a try, right? Like you don't have to necessarily try to learn everything there is because there's always going to be a lot to learn, right? Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
I'd just like to add one more thing that Vector has so many templates, so we can just go and click around and see how it's built. That's also another way.
Thank you, Ria. That was great. So we're going to save the last 10 minutes for just quick recruiter type evals. So for the three of us, the way I want to do it is we just look at everyone's work for 1 minute. Of course, you know, like we'll be less harsh than an actual recruiter. I know everyone's here to learn. So we'll just look at everyone's work for 1 minute. Mavi, for some of those links, could you maybe start a Slack really quickly? Or like you can use the StreamYard private chat, send some of the links for us there. We'll open it. I can send it in the private chat as well. So I know you forwarded some links for me. So we're going to screen this just like what we talked about, right? If it's a case study, we'll screen like case study. If it's portfolio, we'll screen it like a portfolio. And we're going to spend the time just like how a recruiter would spend it. Yeah, so we just send the same one. Ria, Victoria, you all can take a look at that first one. So the first one we're looking at is this one. So we're going to spend 1 minute on it. 1 minute, by the way, is way more than what a recruiter is probably actually going to spend. So a recruiter is going to look at the work like how I'm doing right now. I'll share my first impressions on this since we're kind of short on time. I think if there's anything you two want to add, just go for it. But my quick first impressions are like I've like just skimming this. I see some documentation on the workflow, but the biggest thing I've missed just screening this is I am not exactly sure what is what is the outcome. So I'll skim this again the second time. So this is a problem you're solving, but if I want to actually find what the challenge is, it's kind of hidden. Like maybe I'll find it here. But the challenge of what we're actually solving is a little bit harder to discover. That's definitely something you want to emphasize. The accomplishments here, this is all done in big text. So this could be something that's very hard for the recruiter or hiring manager to discover. Yeah, those are my 2 quick cents. But overall, like I see you have some good process here. So that's something you can definitely leverage a bit more on. Anything to add, Victoria or Ria?
One thing that I would like to add is I was also having the same issue with design systems where I was when I was creating my portfolio. One thing is that there are so many things in design systems that I wanted to add. So a feedback that I got was just focus on one thing that I created in design system and document specifically what I did, how I did, and what was the decision that I took, all those things. Now for this, I see that it's an overall explanation of how you made design system, maybe just sticking to a small portion of what you, a specific component in design system would also be beneficial. See what's better for you, but then that could also explain how you think and yeah, how you think. Yeah, that's
Yeah, we're a bit short on time, so Victoria, I'll skip you for this one, but we can move on to the next one together. This one is for someone in Vancouver. That's cool. Victoria, maybe I'll let you hop on this one too, but I'll quickly skim this one. Usually people click on your first case study. I like you got a little bit of like visual like flair on your homepage. First impression, that's a big plus for me coming from like hiring perspective. I will say though, inside the layout is not too optimized for reading, especially for skimming. Like anyone who's watching the live right now, if you're watching this for the first time, you can skim from start to finish and really like not get that much context, right? Yeah, Victoria, any quick thoughts on your end?
Yeah, I think 2 things I want to add is when you're scrolling down this page, like the first time, there's a lot of like animations of motion going on, and I think that's really hard for the recruiter to skim through it. Also, something else I want to add is like for the images in here, a lot of these, like I think it would be nice to see some graphics that aren't screenshots or like, yeah, it's like exported JPEGs of frames that you've designed or something that's more in depth, like more, because everything that's kind of on this page right now seems like it's from like a high level, I'm kind of seeing everything.
Great points. I'll add on to that even like if you remember to what Victoria, Ria, the 3 of us shared, like when we started, a lot of us started with our portfolio first. Like we're building that case study for our portfolio. Like it might be a school project, it might be an industry project, it might be like one of the internship projects from UXCO. Like it doesn't really matter where the project comes from, but it's like when you're building it for your portfolio, like you're creating new assets and custom like assets for the site, right? So it's like you need to spend the time to actually design it. Designing it isn't just putting screenshots on it. But overall, like I do like this landing thing. I think you have some flair. I like that. I like the personality. So good job as well. Okay, moving on to the next one. I'm just going down the list here. So Rachel, we have you next. Yeah, Rachel, one thing I like about your thing is like immediately you highlight this thing. So I kind of know that I do kind of like the way you have your bio. I will say though, is sometimes to some, like because now it's very competitive, to some folks, like when you say product designer or researcher, it could be a slight red flag that they're wondering like, are you more leading on the research side or the design side? But for me, like personally, like as a design lead, like I would still check out some of your work. But for some recruiters, that could be a red flag. Okay, we'll go into one case and then Ria, maybe I'll let you share your thoughts on this. And then, like I said, I'll quickly skim this as a recruiter. I think out of the ones so far, like yours has the most potential for a well-documented case. But there are some stuff, like if you're looking for a UX job, you definitely want to change. Like, like I know like you're on Webflow, but like you definitely like probably you're in the process of building this. I'll give you like a free pass, but definitely stuff like this you want to remove, and then of course get a domain. Don't use the Webflow domain, and then stuff like Let's Connect you definitely want to remove, right? Because that doesn't really make sense from like a curated case study for a recruiter perspective. But I'm gonna assume like you're still in the process of working on this. Ria, any other quick thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I was just going through it. One good thing is it has a good balance of text and images, which is pretty good. Another thing maybe I would add is, since it says product designer, maybe you can also mention what are the business objectives that you would want to see, success metrics, all those things. Yeah, just that.
Okay, perfect. So Victoria, you know you're going to be next for this one. This is fun. Hopefully, Victoria, Ria, you two are having fun with this as well. So Cindy, I see yours is with Squarespace, the same comment. Like it is definitely worth to get a custom domain. Like I know it does suck. Like we're students, we don't want to spend money where it's not needed, but it just helps package your professionalism a bit more. We will look at your first case here. Also, I'll quickly look at your about page since Ria mentioned it's very important. So yeah, you have a nice about page. You can definitely have a little bit more stuff like that makes it more personal. And remember, like show don't tell, right? And tell is generally like text, right? So try to have more images, right? Like if you have this chunk, like easily think about how you could build it in a different way, right? Like imagine for my side on this section here, if I'm like, oh, like, yeah, have you seen me like teaching or like doing mentorship stuff? And then like imagine that's just text versus like a simple scroll image. Obviously, I know with Squarespace, it might be harder to build or more limitations, but that's worth looking for, right? There's also like, I think you have your resume here. This is good. There's some areas where like if we do be really nitpicky, some recruiters I know, agencies we work with, they might specifically not want bootcamp grads or sort of certificate stuff. So if you already have some good projects like this information, you might even consider taking out of, right? Because if it doesn't benefit you, you don't have to, it's not required for you to have it. Victoria, bouncing it to you, like skimming one of her projects, any quick thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the farm to food project. I'm not sure if that's pulled up on the live or not.
I pulled it up.
But, okay. But first impression, I like that, when you land on this page, you kind of get an overview of your role, what this product is. And I like that you included a picture of, or you included the UI of the screen here. And then I like that your project is broken down into different sections with big headers. So that's very clear to me, as well as being able to see like the screens you design and the thought process behind it. And one thing I like about this is that I'm able to see like the before and afters that you put in underneath like the section 3, refining the design.
Yeah, thank you, Victoria. And Victoria, I know you have another class, so I want to be cautious of your time. Victoria, you can definitely drop early. Ria and I can do a quick closing and wrap up since we're out of time. But Victoria, thank you so much for joining and sharing some of your examples from like the 10-week advanced class. I think that was really helpful for everyone. And yeah, Victoria, thank you so much for your time. If anyone else has any questions for Victoria, you can connect with her on LinkedIn. And then if you have any other questions, if you're already on the UX Go Slack, you can also find her and just DM her directly. But thank you for your time, Victoria.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yay. All right. Bye, Victoria. Have fun in your other class.
Thank you.
Okay. Ria, let's look at one more together and we can do a quick wrap up. So thanks everyone for submitting. We got a lot, so we unfortunately can't cover all of them. Okay, last one. Oh, this one looks promising too. So Artemis, hopefully you're still on the live. It'd be sad if you left the live. So Artemis, let us know if you're still on the live. New York, great place. Is this with Webflow? Like I'm could be Framer as well. This one looks like. Okay, we'll go into one case study together. Oh, you're the one with the left nav, so you're kind of ahead of the game. But hopefully the stuff I talked about for the left nav also makes sense. So even with the left nav, you definitely want to shorten your text. And the reason why the left nav / long documentation isn't as strong as before, right? Like I would teach you to do this in 2020. I wouldn't do it now, is because back in the day, like the HCI process, the double diamond, all that is still relatively newer. Less people have went through that sort of training. So it used to be like a huge plus, right? But now there's just an influx of HCI programs. Everyone's sort of doing it. So being able to convince someone with shorter case studies like generally means higher impact. So that means less content and especially less text. Right? So if I were to critique my own work from like 6 years ago, I would give myself that feedback too. Your work on first glance definitely is the strongest case out of all the ones we've seen today, not just because it's longer, but because I think the process itself is much more streamlined. So, congrats there. But like if this was actually looking for interviews, I think there'll still be a lot of areas where it might not hit the bars for recruiters, especially the way the content is optimized. It's not for that 30-second screening. Ria, I'll pass it to you.
So first of all, love that homepage. It's very personalized, shows your character. Now, coming to this case study, like how Leon said, I would prefer that I can see 4 images. It would be better if you can just focus on 2 images and show it in a better way. And also to the when we come to the prototype, it would be nice if we can see a video or a GIF rather than clickable prototype, because probably I'm assuming they won't be using that time to actually click and see, rather than seeing a video would be easier. And maybe a before and after side by side could also be helpful, but I also know it's a website, so it could be difficult. But yeah, overall it's really nice.
Yeah, I do know. I think you have the skills to be potentially a very good designer. I do know for this project, like just real talk, like to a more experienced recruiter, especially like let's say if you're like looking up to Ria, you're trying to like go to big tech, Google, Amazon, those type of companies. A few areas the case that you may not stand its ground is generally like website level redesigns are no bueno, just because sort of the work level is too simplified. And a lot of times like there's also some tells like that could be a bootcamp project, right? I don't know if it actually is, but like those are usually some red flags like recruiters specifically look for, especially like more experienced like technical recruiters. It's okay if the project you've done was sponsored, like that itself isn't the problem, but the type of the case study really matters. So like if you use like some stuff like Mavi worked on, for example, like this is the project through us, or like the 10-week internship, kind of like what Victoria shared, like with Navid, it's like a project through us, like a 10-week internship. But you generally want to look for projects that are not kind of like website redesign. So for her, it was like an editor. Just having that complexity really works. Like if you remember some of the cases Ria shared, that complexity matters a lot. So I think for you, like Artemis, I think the way you're thinking about the cases are very good, but you definitely need to be a little bit more selective of what you highlight, right? Because most likely the recruiter's just looking at one piece of your work. So maybe the second case, like maybe this one's actually better than that one. I'm not sure, but if they look at one case, they see some red flags. That's a concern you want to avoid, right? So just remember, it is pretty competitive in UX, right? So make sure you don't give people like any reason why they might want to like take it against you. So that's the thing you want to be a little bit more careful of website redesign. Okay, so we'll move towards wrapping up. We just finished most of the open questions. And then Ria, I know we're a little bit over time, so thank you so much for staying late. And then hopefully the session is really valuable to everyone. And then of course, like if you're on the UXGo Slack, you can also find Ria, you can find other folks like Victoria or any of like our alumni by just searching them up. And you'll find like, if just quickly showing the Slack, like you'll see their alumni if you see they have the tag. So you'll like, in case there's someone with the same name, you'll know that's them. So hopefully all this makes sense. And then we will catch you in the next live stream. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ria. Thank you everyone again.
Thank you. Bye.